Good morning. The committee will come to order. It is a pleasure to have all of you testifying before our committee this morning. I applaud you for your leadership on behalf of America's small businesses. America's 30 million small businesses are the cornerstone of our communities. When a Main Street business succeeds, not only do hard-earned dollars get reinvested into our neighborhoods, we also see robust job creation and innovation. But we all know that launching a business is no task for the faint of heart. When it comes to turning a great idea into a thriving business, unfortunately, many entrepreneurs face a series of challenges. To break down these barriers, the SBA fosters a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem, one that offers free or low-cost counseling and training to entrepreneurs across the country. Whether it is helping to create a business plan, navigate the procurement process, market a new product, or identify trade opportunities, the SBA, through its resource partners, offers a wide range of services to help small businesses succeed. The SBA relies on four main partners to deliver these services: Small Business Development Centers, or SBDCs, Women Business Centers, or Wbcs, SCORE, and Veterans Business Outreach Centers, or VBOCs. Today, we are fortunate to be joined by their leaders. Entrepreneurial development initiatives are proven to be a great return on investment. Study has shown that aspiring entrepreneurs and small business owners who receive counseling and training are able to increase sales and create more jobs. They are even proven to be more viable in the long term, with those receiving 3 or more hours of counseling having higher one-year survival rates. Every year, SBA Resources Partners assist more than 1 million entrepreneurs, creating roughly 80,000 jobs. And for every dollar invested between 2012 and 2017, SBDCs return 5 in revenues to federal and state governments. But behind these numbers are very real experiences of hardworking entrepreneurs. Let me share with you the story of Doug Spot, a woman-owned small business in Brooklyn, New York. Chelsea Brownridge was reluctant to take her high-energy terrier for a walk when she runs errands in Brooklyn. Realizing that other dog owners must face similar challenges, Chelsea got to work on developing a state-of-the-art dog house for pet owners to safely and comfortably house their pets while shopping. For advice and assistance, Chelsea turned to the Brooklyn Small Business Development Center, which helped her secure $3.2 million in capital and hire 10 employees. Now she's preparing to expand Doug Spot to more cities nationwide. At today's hearing, I hope to hear similar success stories. However, I'm also eager to learn more about what must be improved. While I commend each one of you for collectively serving over 1 million entrepreneurs per year, there's still more than 28 million small businesses that are not utilizing these services. Today, I would like to learn what more can be done to raise awareness for SBA counseling and training programs to ensure we're reaching as many entrepreneurs as possible. I also have concerns over the administration's past proposals to significantly reduce funding for these programs. Fortunately, there was a bipartisan push this year to restore the proposed cuts. Providing robust levels of funding for this program is essential to their success. Having said that, we must also ensure that taxpayer resources are being used wisely and to the maximum effect. That is why this committee has long pushed for clear metrics and accountability. I would also like to hear our panelists' thoughts on ways we can better measure the results of these valuable counseling and training programs. Small businesses are the backbone of the American economy, and we should provide our entrepreneurs with the critical resources they need to succeed. I'm eager to hear ideas today on how can we improve the SBA's entrepreneurial development programs and better serve our America innovators. With that, I thank each of the witnesses for joining us today, and I look forward to your testimony. I now like to yield to the ranking member, Mr. Chabot, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I apologize for running a little bit late there.
Okay.
I was in Foreign Affairs, and our former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, and I was the next questioner, and I'd been there an hour. So, again, apologize for anything, and then my phone going off. Time and again, this committee has lauded the importance of small businesses to the American economy. The impact that over 30 million small firms has on our nation simply cannot be overestimated. Given the vital nature of small businesses, providing resources that help entrepreneurs and small business owners succeed must be a priority. The Small Business Administration, that's the SBA's, Entrepreneurial Development Programs provide those important resources. The SBA Entrepreneurial Development Programs include Small Business Development Centers, or SBDCs, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, or SCORE, Women's Business Centers, or WBCs, and Veterans Business Outreach Centers, or VBOCs. These programs provide small business owners and entrepreneurs with technical and managerial training related to creating, running, and scaling a small business. While collectively these programs have provided business training and counseling to more than 1.5 million individuals in fiscal year 2017, each SBA Entrepreneurial Development Program is tasked with offering a unique and tailored curriculum. The Sbdc Program is the largest and highest funded entrepreneurial development program with nearly 1,000 locations all across this country and provides a broad range of business counseling and training aimed at meeting the needs of both startup entrepreneurs and existing small business owners. While SBDC's focus on counseling and training, SCORE is tasked with providing mentorship. With roughly 800 locations nationally and over 11,000 volunteer mentors, SCORE seeks to pair entrepreneurs or business owners with a SCORE mentor who can offer specific and tailored business guidance. The WBC program provides business training and counseling specifically tailored to meet the needs of women entrepreneurs, often proving long-term training courses on nights and weekends at their 100-plus locations. Finally, VBOCs are responsible for providing entrepreneurial resources and transition assistance to our nation's veterans through both 20 center locations and other military locations throughout the country. Each of these entrepreneurial development programs plays a specific role in ensuring that our nation's small business owners have the resources they need to be successful. Today's hearing will allow us the opportunity to learn more about these programs and how they serve America's entrepreneurs while allowing us to ask appropriate questions, what's working and what needs to be improved within these programs. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses and to having a productive conversation. And again, I thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and yield back.
The gentleman yields back. And if committee members have an opening statement prepared, we would ask that they be submitted for the record. I would like just to take just a minute to explain the timing rules. Each witness gets 5 minutes to testify, and the members get 5 minutes for questioning. There is a lighting system to assist you. The green light will be on when you begin, and the yellow light comes on when you have 1 minute remaining. The red light comes on when you are out of time, and we ask that you stay within that time frame for the best of your ability. I will now like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Mr. Charles T. Rowe. Mr. T. Rowe is the President and CEO of American America's Small Business Development Centers, the association representing small business development centers. He joined America's SBDC in 2009 after serving at the Small Business Administration, first as the Assistant General Counsel for Legislation and Regulations, and then as the Associate Administrator for Congressional Legislative Affairs. Prior to that, Mr. Rowe was a counsel here at the House Small Business Committee for 6 years. Always welcome. Our second witness is Ms. Corinne Hodges. Ms. Hodges is the CEO of the Associations of Women's Business Centers. Prior to joining the association in January 2019, Ms. Hodges left the public relations team for Kia Motors Manufacturing in Georgia. She is also an experienced small business owner. Ms. Hodges helped at her mother's woman-owned trucking company in Michigan and also ran her own advertising and public relations agency. Welcome. Our third witness today is Mr. Kenneth Yancey. Mr. Yancey is the Chief Executive Officer at SCORE, where he has led the nation's largest network of volunteer business mentors for more than 25 years. Before taking the leadership position at SCORE, Mr. Yancey was the executive director at the National Business Association. Recognized as one of the leading experts on small business, Mr. Yancey is a frequent contributor on many radio and television shows on the topics of entrepreneurship, small business trend, and volunteerism. Welcome. And now I will yield to the ranking member, Mr. Shabbat, to introduce our final witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to introduce today's final witness, Ms. Sherilyn Sagister. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Thank you. Ms. Sagister serves as the Director of the Veterans Business Outreach Center at Old Dominion University. The Old Dominion VBOC provides eligible veterans from Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia with entrepreneurial training and counseling as part of the university's Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Prior to joining the Old Dominion University VBOC, Ms. Sagister had roughly 2 decades of experience in business and economic development within both the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, and we thank you for joining us this morning. Yield back.
And now we recognize Mr. Rowe for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Velasquez, Ranking Member Shabbat, members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to testify on behalf of America's Small Business Development Centers. For 40 years, SBDCs have been providing services to small business owners, focusing on one-on-one advising to improve their businesses. As Mr. Shabbat said, we have a network of over 975 locations with 4,000 dedicated professionals who assist hundreds of thousands of small businesses nationwide. We operate primarily through colleges and universities, and the SBDC hosts manage the networks and subcenters and provide matching funds. We serve small businesses at all stages. The mix is about 60-40, 60% existing, 40% startup. 45% of our clients are women, 10% are veterans, 33% are minorities. And yearly, we provide over 1.5 million hours of counseling and training to over 500,000 small businesses. From 2012 to 2018, SBDCs helped their clients obtain over $30 billion in capital, increase sales by $40 billion, and create over 538,000 jobs. Our services tend to be a little more in-depth and varied. So what I'd like to highlight is some of the services, but more particularly how we focus on them. Every SBDC undergoes accreditation, a week-long examination with a rigorous self-study, interviews, and written reports. The process is based on the NIST Malcolm Baldrige quality standards. And a key component is the needs assessment. The SBDC focuses on the client's needs locally and the local economy, ensuring service relevance. As a result, SBDCs offer both specialized services and general business assistance. For veterans, we prioritize assistance. We have specialized programs in states with large veteran populations to assist with pre- and post-deployment needs. And as well, we participate in Boots to Business and other transition assistance programs. Our outreach to underserved communities is also a significant priority. Our members support targeted outreach covering everything from MBE certification to business corridor revitalization. And we're mandated to cover entire states, so our initiatives meet rural needs as well. Our Texas SBDC hosts an annual rural conference, and our Alabama SBDC has a rural strong collaboration with USDA. And we have over 500 certified export assistance counselors partnering with the Census Bureau to provide export training, and in many states, the SBDC is a key component of the state's export program. And we're integral in disaster response and often the first on the scene to set up business recovery centers with FEMA and SBA. In Florida, for example, SBDC is a primary disaster responder for the state. We also, 3 years ago, started offering cybersecurity training. Small business owners lacked information and skills, so SBDC's developed assessment tools, training programs, and enhanced their cyber skills and ensured that small contractors are current on federal cybersecurity requirements. And along the lines of procurement, 29 of the 94 PTACs are supported by SBDCs, offering in-depth assistance to small businesses navigating federal procurement. Other SBDCs offer more introductory courses on contracting and help with certifications. Recently, we began collecting new SBA metrics. This year will be a baseline year, and our hope is that this will be a larger discussion on best ways to help small business. America's SBDCs don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach. Our networks have different resources and needs, and what we want to be sure is that the focus is on measures that reflect small business success. Now, I just want to sum up here and say, I talked about all the things we do, but the most important thing we do is work with all of our colleagues here at the table and the PTACs. We refer clients back and forth regularly because none of us can be all things to all small businesses. And with that in mind, just finally going to say, we strongly support the idea of reauthorizing the Entrepreneurial Development Programs. In my written testimony, outlined a number of areas for consideration, and I'd look forward to your questions on that. I think it's time for a full conversation on the services and all of our commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rohn. And now, Ms. Hodges, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairwoman Velasquez, Ranking Member Shabbat, and distinguished members of the committee, good morning and thank you so much for convening today's hearing. My name is Corinne Hodges and I serve as the CEO of the Association of Women's Business Centers. Our organization supports the network of WBCs by providing programming and advocacy to improve services to women entrepreneurs. I'm honored to be here today and I'm joined by our board, who's behind me. The Wbc program is a public-private partnership with over 30 years of success in providing long-term training, counseling, mentoring, and access to capital for women entrepreneurs across the country. What began as 4 demonstration sites in 1988 is now a network of 114 centers with more than 150 locations nationwide, in no small part thanks to this committee for your effort there and support. In that time, WBCs have served more than 2 million women entrepreneurs, leading to the creation and expansion of tens of thousands of new businesses and jobs. In fiscal year 2017, we reached 148,000 entrepreneurs, ranging from startups seeking capital to established businesses exploring new markets. Each year, we help to secure hundreds of millions of dollars in financing, assisting in winning government and corporate contracts, and support the hiring of thousands of new employees. According to the SBA's 2015 report, the most recently released, 96% of WBC clients reported revenue growth totaling a staggering $658 million. This led to 1 in 10 businesses hiring at least 1 new employee, creating nearly 25,000 jobs. WBCs also play a significant role in fueling the growth of minority-owned businesses. 45% of clients in 2016 were minorities, which required many centers to adapt. Today, 64% of WBCs provide programming in 2 or more languages, and nationally services are provided in more than 35 languages. Each WBC is unique, designing program and delivery models with their communities in mind. At the Brooklyn Women's Business Center, where fashion and beauty knowledge was in demand, counselors created training to meet the needs within that industry. They brought in beauty experts, celebrity stylists, and even intellectual property attorneys to help protect their clients' creations. They now plan to purchase sewing machines and offer classes on site for those interested in creating fashion prototypes or textile manufacturing. Our services are distinctly different from other resource partners due in large part to the unique challenges facing women business owners. Our clients consistently say they come to WBCs not just for business education and consulting, but for a supportive environment that helps build self-efficacy through addressing 4 critical issues: competence, confidence, capital, and connection. The result is real economic impact felt by the client and their community. Janae Brower, a WBC client in Michigan, owns an upcycling manufacturing company called Public Thread. It was with the support of other businesswomen that she moved this business out of her kitchen and into a commercial manufacturing space. As she puts it, women are uniquely positioned to see the long-term benefits to communities rather than just the short-term financial goals. Evaluation data from WBC programs indicate that women like Janae who receive business assistance from their programs build larger businesses, create more jobs, and have significantly higher survival rates than the national average. Women's Economic Ventures in California boasts an 80% survival rate after 5 years for its clients, far above the national average of 50%. Moreover, more than 40% of their clients have employees, compared to the national average of only 12% of all women-owned firms. In Chicago, the Women's Business Development Center created the Developing Your Childcare Business course, professionalizing dozens of home-based businesses in low-income communities. Finally, and perhaps most critically, the WBC program has proven to be a good investment of taxpayer dollars. Private sector fundraising enhanced by the visibility of the SBA partnership helps to match federal dollars more than 3 to 1. For every $1 federal dollar invested in the program, the WBC program returns $46 to the economy. And yet we're not realizing our full potential. We need policymakers to strengthen and modernize the WBC program, expanding our proven impact to communities across the country. We urge Congress to raise a 30-year-old arbitrary cap that prevents our best centers from expanding and remove outdated requirements that divert resources from counseling to back-office bureaucracy. A key inefficiency that comes to mind actually provides a disincentive for centers to raise additional non-federal funds. The upward trajectory of the program is also deserving of more federal funding. Ensuring adequate resources is a key component to continuing the growth of the WBC program and women's entrepreneurship more broadly. Unfortunately, resources for the program have not grown in parallel to the more than 50% increase in centers over the last 15 years. So we urge congressional action to improve data collection in order to quantify just how much growth is happening. The challenges face women entrepreneurs persist, as must the commitment of Congress to advancing those priorities. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. And now, Mr. Yancey, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Velasquez, Ranking Member Shabbat, members of the committee, my name is Ken Yancey, and I'm the CEO at SCORE. Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony to the committee regarding SCORE's programs, services, and plans for the future. We appreciate being on the witness panel with our friends and partners from the SBDC, Women's Business Centers, and the VBOX. And we also want to thank our founding partner who 55 years ago established our organization and continues to be that primary partner of the SBA. Fiscal year 18 was another effective year for SCORE as measured by client volume, impact, and client engagement. In fiscal year 18, SCORE helped clients to create more than 32,000 new small businesses and 136,000 total jobs. Our cost to create a job is $81. The cost to create a business is $340. This efficiency in creating jobs and businesses provides a tremendous return on all federal dollars invested in SCORE. In fiscal year 18 alone, SCORE clients returned an estimated $47 in new tax revenue to the federal treasury for every dollar appropriated to SCORE. Through an annual survey completed by PricewaterhouseCoopers, SCORE has measured client engagement for nearly a decade. In fiscal year 18, SCORE client engagement, a measure similar to client satisfaction, was 4.29 on a 5-point scale, a significant increase from the previous year. We're proud of the work our volunteers do with clients, and this improvement continues to show that our volunteer onboarding, certification, and training do work. Last year, we began the implementation of SCORE's Vision 2025, a futures initiative intended to ensure our relevancy for the next 50 years. Vision 2025 guides decision and organizational development within SCORE. As an organization, we must continue our ongoing cultural transformation by operating with a one SCORE mindset. in which headquarters, chapters, volunteers, and the SCORE Foundation work together to achieve the goals of increased focus on clients, quality, accountability, and growth. Examples of our One SCORE approach include the standardization of all chapter websites, resulting in greater web traffic, consistent messaging and branding, and increased client services. SCORE is developing a new Salesforce-based CRM system that will be deployed in fiscal year 20. The system will make it easier for both volunteers and clients to do business with SCORE, and it's mobile-friendly, allowing both to engage with SCORE via their handheld device. SCORE has centralized social media in 270 chapters. Participating chapters saw an 8.9% increase in services, triple that of non-pilot chapters. SCORE is centralizing all accounting and finance systems nationwide. Centralizing accounting functions will reduce the administrative burden at the chapter level, allowing our leaders to focus more on client needs. It also allows chapters to continue to have control over their funds and, importantly, reduces risk at the organizational level. SCORE has standardized volunteer onboarding and volunteer training, resulting in greater consistency of services, improved quality, and greater client impact. One of SCORE's most important initiatives is diversity and inclusion. SCORE is committed to improving the diversity of both clients and volunteers and ensuring that SCORE is intentionally inclusive at every level of the organization. In 2017, a National Inclusion Task Force was formed to drive strategic cultural change throughout SCORE. By year's end, all volunteer leaders had been trained in sessions across the country, and online inclusivity training is now mandatory annually for all of our volunteers. We've improved from 22% women and minority volunteers in 2012 to 31% in 2018. Client diversity has improved as well. This, however, is not good enough. We continue to aggressively address these challenges. Our goal is to effectively serve all people with respect, dignity, and professionalism regardless of their adjective. To help SCORE achieve its goals to better serve our clients and achieve all that our volunteers are capable of, we respectfully request an authorization and appropriation of $13.5 million in fiscal year 2020. We also request a 3-year authorization of $13.5 million in 20, $13.5 million in 21, and $15.5 million in 22. I would also encourage the committee to support and invest in the other resource partners who are here, who are part of the entrepreneurial fabric of all communities where we serve, and outstanding partners in those communities as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Sagaster, now you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, and I want to thank Chairwoman Velasquez and our ranking member, Mr. Shabat, for this opportunity to speak before you this morning, as well as I'm honored to join our other major resource partners that serve small businesses in our country. There is no better time to be a startup entrepreneur in the U.S. than at this moment. The financial conditions are certainly favorable, as well as the economic outlook for the future, not to mention the traditional negative and/or skeptical mindset regarding entrepreneurship is a thing of the past. Entrepreneurship is currently thought of not only in a positive light, but is considered the thing to do, especially if you are a millennial or a veteran. And if that is the case, it is thought of as the way to achieve autonomy, success, and independent wealth. Furthermore, research conducted after each major war since post-World War II tells us veteran entrepreneurship significantly increases after each major war. And the Iraq and Afghanistan war is no different. Research has also shown veterans make the best entrepreneurs, as they acquire skills and character that are conducive to what is required to entrepreneurial success. An example of these character traits are as follows. We have an excellent work ethic. We have a sound understanding of the need for a plan and the necessity to follow the plan. Veterans are risk adverse, and failure is not an option, among other traits. In addition, these new veterans are the most educated and technologically advanced service members than any before them. When considering this, combined with the previously mentioned character traits gained by military service, you have a sector of the population that is prime for taking entrepreneurship and thereby control over their future. On the other hand, startups have many challenges, as any form of entrepreneurship does. In particular, a startup is immediately challenged when it comes to startup capital. A startup is like any small business, funding is the biggest obstacle to confront. Along with lack of experience or knowledge as an entrepreneur. With that said, the following statistics provide validity to what is observed in the startup and entrepreneurial community. Approximately 50% of small businesses fail in the first 4 years, with the leading cause being incompetence and lack of managerial experience at 30%, and 82% of the business's failure due to cash flow deficiency. As the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Veterans Business Development, we are a premier entrepreneurial development program. As the Veteran Business Outreach Centers located across the U.S., and there are 22 of us, with each center responsible for a geographic region that covers multiple states. For example, the center that I oversee as the director of Region 3 includes the state of Virginia and West Virginia. We are located at Old Dominion University, Veterans Business Outreach Center, as part of the university's Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. This center is located approximately 4.5 miles from the Naval Station Norfolk, the largest naval base in the world, who transitions out over 10,000 sailors each year. And for the last 6 years, it has done this and continues to do so as our estimates show. With the last few minutes of my time, I would like to focus on the 3 requirements that we have as VBOCs. Number 1 is military transition, and that includes military spouses as well. And a part of that military transition program is one of the best-known entrepreneurial programs I have ever seen in my career, and that is a program called Boots to Business. Boots to Business is a 2-day intense introduction to entrepreneurship that our transitioning service members go through. It is delivered on an installation of which they are transitioning out, and it is one of 3 tracks that they are given. I look for the opportunity to speak more about Boots to Business. I looked for the opportunity to talk about military spouses, as well as economic disadvantaged areas of the states that we cover, and how it is that we're able to achieve our requirements. Military transition, outreach and other trainings, as well as business counseling, which is the magic. That's where the magic happens. And I thank this committee and all guests for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Agaster. And now I will recognize myself for 5 minutes. One of my top priorities for this Congress is to, of course, to review and update and modernize the entrepreneurial development programs. So I'm giving you this opportunity, each one of you, to tell me, in your view, what is working and what is working well and what needs to be improved. Mr. Rowe.
I think the programs here at the table are working quite well. We try very hard to work together. We're all limited by resources, I think, at a certain level. Sometimes the biggest problem we face is kind of a lack of clear guidance. It's sort of like we're all on a team together. We've got goals set for ourselves, but nobody's told us what the big goal is at the end. It's sort of like we're all there playing football, but nobody's talking about the Super Bowl. And to me, that is, what are we trying to get to, all of us and the SBA, as an end game for small business in this country? And they're just not a clear vision.
Thank you. Ms. Hodges?
I would agree with Mr. Rowe. I speak for the WBC program, and it does work well. Indeed, we surpass or exceed the targets that SBA sets for us, so we see the program as very successful. What isn't working for us is just the outdated statute that you mentioned. Reauthorization for us means, hopefully, increased appropriations that specifically would lift the cap per center, which is a 30-year-old cap, and also allow additional funding for us to have more centers. Also, we would entertain the idea and support the idea of accreditation that would most likely be modeled after the SBDCs.
Thank you. Mr. Yancey?
I know that the SBA is working hard at all levels on additional transparency. It's good to know, as T said, who's doing what and what the end goal is. I also know that the SBA is working to update and upgrade their technological systems. That would be valuable and useful for us. We do our own measurement, as you heard. It's important to us. It provides far more information than just impact. We use it to manage, and we wouldn't want to, at any point, lose that opportunity to do that on our own.
Thank you. Ms. Sagester?
I can say I absolutely agree with T. All of us resource partners, we appreciate the value that we all bring to the small business owner and the entrepreneur and collaborate quite often. As a matter of fact, in our suite, we have a VBOC, we have a Women's Business Center, and we have a PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which we are constantly collaborating. So I think that's going really well. I think we personally, our center has experienced great success with also our SBA district office in Richmond for Virginia, and work extremely well with the 2 district offices in the state of West Virginia. So, and not to mention our headquarters here in DC with the OVBD is very supportive. With where I would like to see some action,
Yes.
that would be very similar as well to my predecessor, to my colleagues, and that is the appropriations. We are covering multi-states that require extensive travel and expenses. And what keeps me awake is at night is serving those that are not in my immediate area. And so with additional appropriations and consideration for the mission that we have, that is where I think we could have a greater impact.
Thank you. Thank you. As you know, the SBA now is moving towards outcome-based measures, like unique client serve and new business start from the output-based data. So do you believe these goals better measure the quality of services that you provide, T?
They can. But I think there are problems with all of them. If you look at new business starts, unless that's a longitudinal view, more than 1 year snapshot, you don't know whether you've created a good business or a business is going to fail in 6 months.
So is SBA working with you in establishing these goals?
Well,
What type of input, feedback are you providing, all of you?
Well, we've had a few meetings with SBA. I would like to establish this as a ongoing collaborative effort to negotiate what our goals are nationally and individually amongst the networks, because they're all changing.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but I would like to hear from the other centers, programs. Ms. Hodges, what is your take on this new development?
It's still very new, this move toward capturing the unique clients versus total clients served. That is a more fair number. It's a better number. Where we lack is in some of the access to the data collected. We're working on that, and SBA is committed to that as well, and we're glad for that. We encourage all of the partners at the table, SBA and Congress, to continue to prioritize this matter.
Mr. Yancey.
The information that we've been asked to collect is information we had previously collected. I'm not sure that in a vacuum it tells the best story. We like to ask a question at SCORE, did SCORE help you? 77% of the clients say we did. You might not have started a business. We might have helped you understand you weren't quite ready and what was next. So there's metrics and value beyond just the creation of a job and the creation of a business.
Okay. Ms. Agaster.
One of the difficult metrics to acquire is how many businesses are successful and how long have they been in business. It's very difficult to get these clients to report to us. We've tried surveys, phone calls, letters, everything. Once they get off the ground and they're growing and running, they say they're too busy to get back to us. That's a metric that we need to figure out how can we better measure
Thank you.
the successes.
Thank you. My time has expired, and now I yield to the ranking member for
Thank
5
you.
minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the first question would be to all the panel. I'll start with you, T. In the current economic environment, unemployment being so low, a lot of small businesses, and I hear this back in my district all the time when I tour various small businesses, they're struggling to find qualified people. And in what way does your particular program assist small businesses who are facing the problem is they just can't find good people? And a lot of times I hear, well, they need to show up for work consistently and pass a drug test and those kind of things. And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that's not the case with. So, Mr. Rowe?
Well, what most SBDCs work on is assisting the clients with managing a new workforce. But what we hear constantly from them is that there's a lack of workforce development, with the exception in some of the skilled union trades. Mm-hmm. And really what they need is help developing apprenticeship programs that can help the vast majority of small businesses and service industries, et cetera, to build a workforce.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hodges?
Workforce development obviously is a critical need in the country nationwide. For any business who's suffering from the ability to attract and recruit the qualified and talented workforce that they need, they would benefit from the long-term training opportunities that we provide in our centers. It's really, I think, something unique in our program, the ability for us to build that relationship and provide the long-term training, because these solutions aren't easy and they're not quick.
Thank you. Mr. Yancey?
Similar to our colleagues, we would bring in volunteers with HR experience, particularly in recruiting, help clients to package their opportunity differently and maybe better than competing organizations, talk about training that could occur for a new employee, opportunities that could occur, and help them compete better and be more prepared in a really difficult environment where there's truly a war for talent right now.
Thank you. And Ms. Sagister?
In our area, we are the VEC, the Veteran Employment Center, and also we've established a veteran the VEC, Veteran Employment Center. We're the veteran partner for them. And so many times what happens is veterans, of course, also make great employees. They show up for work. They have a good work ethic. So we are working with the VEC, and we're providing training on site. We have a new center there in Norfolk, and we're providing employment training right on site. I think what we're looking at, too, across the country is we need to better train folks for the jobs that are available now, especially in the trades, because we don't want to lose those.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rowe, let me go to you again. Your testimony noted that SBDCs are often located at colleges and universities. Other than being, located there, what in other ways, what ways does the host institution and the SBDC work together, other than being at the same place?
We actually have a lot of resources from the business schools where we use the student body, the professors, to bring new management concepts out to our small business owners. Also, there's a huge science and technical component where we work with SBIR applicants regularly to help make sure that there's a broad array of small businesses accessing those R&D dollars.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hodges, in your testimony, you highlighted the importance of women's business centers serving economically disadvantaged and underserved populations. How do your centers specifically target that demographic?
I won't say that this is how we target the demographic, but they're best served by providing not only the counseling, the competence factor and confidence, but access to capital. It is so critical. In fact, I think our program represents the majority of the micro enterprise lenders in the room. And this access to capital is just not available to a lot of these entrepreneurs in any other way. If it weren't for these micro enterprise lenders, which comprise 40% of our centers, quite honestly, these entrepreneurs wouldn't have access to it at all.
Okay, my time's almost wrapped. I'm almost at an end. So rather than ask a question, I'll just tell you, Mr. Yancey, I've had an opportunity to speak at various gatherings of SCORE and meet with them on occasion, and I know you all do a tremendous amount of good for a whole lot of folks. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you, and I bet you agree with that. Okay, very good. Thank you.
The
I yield back.
gentleman yields back, and now I recognize the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Rural Development, Agriculture, Trade, and Entrepreneurship from Iowa, Ms. Finkenauer. For 5
Thank you.
minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate you all being here today. You all do incredible work and very grateful for your service and everything that you do. So I have to tell you, so I'm from Iowa 1. It is about a fourth of the state of Iowa. So we've got kind of 3 bigger cities, and then the rest is pretty rural and with some smaller towns. And despite the weather lately, my favorite thing, obviously, part of this job is getting to go back and have my work periods and getting to meet with folks all over the district. And this last work period, so last week, I had a great opportunity to go visit University of Northern Iowa and their business community service program, and also a small business in one of our smaller towns, Makokata, called Precision Metalworks. And at the university, it was great to get to visit them. I've done it multiple times, but again, this was one of the first times really focusing on their business center, and they're doing a great job. I mean, they're housing the Small Business Development Center along with other programs all under one roof where you're helping small businesses, entrepreneurs, even helping governments with marketing, new business incubation, and even help with regulatory compliance. And then Precision Metalworks, it's a great business model. They've been in Makokata since the 80s, and on top of their regular business, which is helping with commercial washers, they also work a lot with some of our other folks in the state and across the country who come in and say, I have a great idea for this. Can you manufacture it for me? And see what we do here. And I've been, hearing great stories from what they've been able to do. But unfortunately, even though we see this in my district and it's happening, I mean, the data, according to the Office of Advocacy, is just showing that, rural self-employment since 1988 to 2016 has fallen 20%. And then on top of it, we're also lacking more youth entrepreneurs as well. So this really is, to Mr. Rowe and anybody else who wants to jump in on it, very curious of all your takes on it. But what are some of the bigger challenges that rural entrepreneurs are facing? And then what are some of the efforts that you're taking to ensure that rural small businesses are receiving the technical assistance they require to build a robust, sustainable business? And is marketing a part of that suite? Because that was one of the things that really stuck out to me with talking to Precision Metalworks with some of the folks they're working with. They've got great products they're developing, yet the next step, that marketing part, they're falling behind on. And so and it helps them if that small business they're helping does well. So trying to figure out what more can we be doing, and are we missing anything?
Well, one of the bigger problems we see and we face with our clients in rural areas is simply a lack of broadband and a lack of internet marketing that really helps them. You can't reach the world now the way you used to. You've got to be internet savvy, but you've also got to be able to get serious broadband access. Now, SBDCs are located at colleges and universities, but they tend to be just like isolated islands of broadband.
Yeah.
And so, building that infrastructure is a huge issue. And I know that my folks have talked to you about this. I've talked with Mr. Kelly about it. That's probably a key focus for us, is how can we get more broadband to our clients to get their products to the world.
Thank you. And Ms. Hodges? Yeah.
Thank you. It is an ongoing challenge, but I think we can also, in addition to the comments Mr. Rowe made, we can be innovative, and some of our centers have done just that. For example, in Oklahoma, we have one of our centers bought buses outfitted with entrepreneurial labs and drove to the clients across the state. And in Nebraska, we actually don't have a brick and mortar center location. Rather, those resources are used to deploy the counselors and the resources all across the state. So again, going to the rural areas to serve, and then sounding like a broken record, more resources, appropriated would also help support that greater infrastructure needed.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Yancey?
I don't have a lot to add. I think the broadband issue is a real challenge. Our desire is to serve communities using web-based technologies that allow us to do that. And where broadband isn't available, our ability to serve without bricks and mortar is very, very limited. We do circuit rides, not exactly like buses and things, but we do try to get out. But the broadband piece is important, and it is very expensive to do that, so the funding available for that purpose would be helpful as well.
Thank you. And Ms. Sagastar, I'm sorry, I know my time has expired, but thank you so much for being here, all of you. And Madam Chair, I yield back.
The gentle lady yields back, and now we recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Balderson, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Innovation and Workforce Development, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you also to the committee. My dear colleague, Mr. Shabbat, kind of jumped on my question for you, Mr. Rowe, but it was quite a coincidence this morning. I've gotten pretty savvy here on my phone. I even highlighted it this morning, but I'm reading the newspaper at 6:30 this morning, the Columbus Dispatch, which is my district big newspaper. And it was a study that has been done, and this organization does it every year annually for small businesses. And 56.9% of the companies identified finding qualified workers as their biggest issue and their biggest challenge into doing business, and finding those qualified workers. This has been the top issue for them in the last 5 years during this survey. So I thought that was pretty interesting this morning for me to come across that at 6:30, 6:35, and to see this. But so my question, Mr. Rowe, is, as the ranking member on the subcommittee for innovation and workforce development, this is something I'm very passionate about. And I mean, are there any ideas out there that the SBDCs and the ED program that they can give us suggestions with, or any conclusion on that of what support we can do?
Well, one of the things I've actually been privileged to be tasked to work with a working group at the Department of Labor on what they call industry-recognized apprenticeship programs. And essentially what we're trying to do is find a way to formalize the apprenticeship programs in a variety of industries outside of the skilled trades, the registered apprenticeship programs that you find at DOL, and expand the ability to get workforce. And I think I see my role on that as, we have so many clients out there who could use this help. What we need to do is develop those accredited programs to train these folks.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Saster, I apologize. My question to you would be, my office met yesterday with a group from the American Legion, and had, some of the issues that they were discussing was problems that many veterans have, lack of access to skilled training programs that would help them transition into the workforce. My question is there anything out there more that we can do to help address this problem? And you don't have to go through a whole list of things. I know there's pretty broad, but anything top?
as I had been mentioning with regards to veteran employment, we are partnering as well with, like I said, the Virginia Employment Commission. And there are many veterans who have trades to be a good small business owner. So what we're seeing a lot of and we're promoting is helping them find employment so that they can support themselves and their families, and then help and assist them on the side to start preparing themselves for small business ownership. And we have got several that are in that program right now. And therefore, it helps solve some of the labor problem and the veterans issues, as well as their future. But as far as our center also goes, is we do a lot of in-house training, a lot on business itself, how, life skills. They have a hard time converting their military vita into a resume. It's very difficult for them, and they don't even see the similarities. So we're providing support with that as well.
Okay. I do want to add, and I'd love to work with your organization on something like this, but in the state of Ohio, in the state legislature where I served, we did a bill for veterans for CDL license. A veteran coming back in and having done that job in the military service and having that ability to do that and taking away a lot of the, I guess I'll use the word red tape or bureaucracy to get that license back again. And that's been a big gap that has been filled. I shouldn't say big, but it's been filled a little bit. And that's something I'd like to see us do at the federal
We
level
have a
also.
similar program such as that at Tidewater Community College in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
And it works extremely well. We have the same similar program with regards to military firefighters and security officers.
Okay.
So it's a great transition.
I look forward to working with you. And Madam Chair, I yield back to
I
you
would welcome the
anytime.
opportunity, sir.
Thank you.
The gentleman yields back, and now the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Golden, Chairman of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Infrastructure, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Sagister, I think I'll kind of go where it sounded like you might have been talking a little bit about something that is top of mind for you, which is how do you reach out to those people that are far away from your center. And just to give you a sense of why I share that concern with you, Virginia has an awful lot of veterans, which is a great thing, and Maine does not have as many, but when we look at the per capita statistics, it's about 1 in 10, and that's even stronger out in rural Maine. In the district that I represent, a much higher per capita percentage. Yet our closest center, similar to yours, is in Rhode Island, 3 states away. So, I think we agree that more centers would be better if there were enough funding for that. But I mean, what is the appropriate ratio, in your opinion, around the country?
With regards to
Number of centers,
or
region, or per
well, we
veteran
have
served.
22 centers, as I was saying, and a great deal of where those 22 centers are located depends on what organizations apply and respond to the proposal to have a center.
Mm-hmm.
That's where a great deal of it really is. If the SBA doesn't receive any proposals from a certain area, then that area kind of misses out. So it's something that you could encourage in your area, is for organizations to apply when the opportunity is there on grants.gov. But I would like to just say real quickly, with regards to the economic disadvantaged rural areas that we have, that is what keeps me awake at night. I want to make sure that all the constituents that we're responsible for has access to our resources, if at all possible. So we have now been able, for the last year, it took me 4 years to be able to get there, but we now offer all of our trainings are webinars, and we promote that. But the challenge we're having is getting the word out to the right, to those rural areas that this resource is available. That's one of the areas that we really, I think, need to focus on, is how can we better market all of our resources and all of our partners. So I'm personally going to West Virginia next month, and I'll be there for a week doing just that. And I'm also traveling to some of our disadvantaged areas here in Virginia, such as Wise County, and we're working with the American Legion out there to do some outreach. That's very, very, very important because we can't help them if they don't know we're here and have the information to dial in for those webinars and go to the website and listen to podcasts or so on and so forth.
Thank you very much for that. You know, and it brings me to another point, which I'm just coming off District Week, traveling all over a very large rural area. I've talked to no shortage of small business owners in the last week and past couple of months. And look, we often ask, you know, are you aware of these programs, each of the ones that you all run, and about SBA in particular? And often it is not the first thing that small business owners are thinking about in rural Maine. So I got to put a plug in there for you know, to this committee and you all. Let's pick up the marketing and make sure that it's out there. You know, obviously Maine's region should be looking to put in an application for a center in Maine. Rhode Island is like a lifetime away from rural Maine, so that's just not good enough. And when it comes to this issue of reaching out on the internet, I mean, broadband sounds great. What we often hear people in Maine saying is we'll just take faster internet because it is practically dial-up in many regions. So if I could, Mr. Rowe, just a question for you. Sitting in a community recently, this issue of workforce came up, and there was many different industries sitting around the table, a lot of small business, and while they didn't have necessarily all the same types of work requirements, you know, there were some shared factors in terms of the needs that are lacking in the community and in our workforce. So we had about 20 different business owners sitting as well with Chamber of Commerce and municipal leaders trying to get at this issue of how do we establish some kind of training program to get workers in here. What would be the proper way for them to interface with someone like SBDC? Can they come to you as a group? Can a whole community come to you and work with you?
Sure.
Or do you need one? Okay.
Absolutely, sir.
Very good. So they don't have to pick one business to lead. They could actually reach out to you as an entire municipality.
You know, Mark Delisle at USM is our state director, and I'm sure you'd be happy to hear from him.
Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. And now we recognize Mr. Joyce from Pennsylvania, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Rural Development, Agriculture, Entrepreneurship, and Trade for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today, because what you bring to us is so important. Mr. Rowe, you talked about the lack of internet capabilities. I'm from South Central Pennsylvania, from Gettysburg out to where Flight 93 went down. Even as we travel, we lose our navigation systems. We know that broadband is very limited in these areas. I think that each one of you would be able to more effectively do your jobs with a better broadband system, particularly when facing rural areas. I think we recognize that as a committee. I think that we're all aware that there could be improvements made in that. But I'm going to turn this question around because I think each one of you bring a different skill set to the table, and you do have the abilities to communicate with each other. Mr. Rowe, your group is incredible. They bring so much to my district. So when you're setting up a program, how do you interface with the other people at the table? How do you let people know that WBC, which is so important on so many different levels, might bring a different flavor, if we'll use that term, a different angle to the entire equation? How do you all as a group communicate with each other? How do you present to the different communities that you address? Because you have different skill sets. You have different tools in your tool belts. We are impressed by that. How do you get that out to the people?
Well, I wish I could say there was some, uniform book that we have on this. We've got 63 networks, and I can't remember how many chapters that Ken has. It's really a very personal thing. It's the investment that our folks make to know about the SCORE chapter in their area, or the Women's Business Center, or the VBOC, which hopefully isn't 3 states away, and be able to recognize our own faults, and that's the big thing. When we do our self-assessments and our needs assessments, it's very clear we can only cover so many things. So we need to lean, and it may be the SBDC in Phoenix sending someone to a SCORE counselor in Las Vegas, Nevada, because they know that there's an expert there. But it's been a very organic sort of a communication system for all of us.
Do we need more than that? Do each one of your websites need to access each other so that someone, if they're not seeing the information that's best provided to their specific problems, that they can go back to WBC or they can go back to SCORE? Is that something that's worth considering?
Yeah, I think it would be fabulous if within our networks we could, essentially search and say, okay, we need someone who's an expert on X.
Military issues.
Right. For
And this is how you click on this tab and get to this point. That's my question for you. Ms. Sagister, do you think that that would work as well from your side?
I think it's excellent. What we are in the process of doing is adding our resource partners, their links from our website directly to theirs, so that when clients or prospective clients go to our website, they can also, under resources, just click SCORE. It goes straight to the either the national, but right now, local SCORE chapters.
Right.
But again, we wished, just so the committee knows, that we want a VBOC in every state. That should be our goal, absolutely, because as T was saying, we hope that the VBOC's not 3 states away, okay? But we also at our center, one of the other ways that we reach out and use our resource partners and collaborate is through bringing them in as subject matter experts, SMEs on our trainings. SCORE is vital. SBDCs are vital. Women's business centers. They come in as a subject matter expert and they'll teach a module or whatever, and then they have full access to that audience as well. And so then the clients start to see us not as individual silos, but as they have an entire team that's on their side.
And that entire team has to be commended. Thank you for being here today. I defer my time back.
Gentlemen's time has expired, so now I recognize Ms. Holohan from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you to the committee for coming. I'm a woman, I'm a veteran, I'm an entrepreneur, and so I sort of fit into all of your buckets, and I really appreciate everything that you've done. I also really appreciated Mr. Yancey's testimony that talked a little bit about implementations of CRMs and ERPs, and you guys have all been talking about data and the importance of measuring and metrics. What my question is sort of turning the business back onto the business of your businesses. I appreciate that each of you are asking for different resources to be allocated to one another, but my question is, has there been any form of collaboration, this gets to the person's question before me, on use of systems to make sure that when you implement something like Salesforce, that you maybe have a different instance across every one of your organizations, and that you're kind of using best practices and the ways that you've learned to measure your successes amongst each other. And I think that there may be an enormous amount of overlap on each of your CRMs that you could maybe benefit from if that was something that you could fold into. So that's one of my questions.
We have, at SCORE, collaborated with SBA and over the years in meetings with other resource partners to talk about what was appropriate to measure and how to measure it. We never really talked about systems that would talk to one another. When we do transmit data, it is, we're working on it being a very simple process. All of the resource partners would have access through our website to volunteers, to counselors, skills, whatever it happens to be. In terms of the CRM, that has been private, only because there's data and other things. We'd be happy to share what we've done, how we've done it, the architecture behind it. what we use for our initial business requirements analysis.
Exactly.
Et cetera. We'll share that with the world.
I just think there'd be so much synergy and so much opportunity to
Very well
save
may be.
money between the four organizations.
Very well may be.
And that's sort of one of my first questions. The other questions, you touched a little bit on diversity and inclusion initiatives and understand that that's really important. But are you guys as entrepreneurial kind of igniters also talking about corporate social responsibility initiatives at all? Is that become a thing that you also are talking to your entrepreneurs about?
With regards to that, I would say the answer is yes, but I'd like to just back up a second on the
course.
previous. The Women's Business Center uses a different database than we do. We use Neosera, and it just so happens that the PTAC also uses Neosera. However, we cannot. We are all individual, as Mr. Yancey was saying. We're not able to share based on client privilege.
It's more on architecture that I'm
It's
asking about. It's kind of more on sort of best practices and metrics and measures, that it just seems like there's got to be a whole lot going on there where we could save resources and you guys could be collaborating on that. And maybe there's some sort of an additional initiative
And
that
there may
might be
be
necessary
some
to
sort
do
of
that.
initiative that the committee could bring to light with regards to the SBA, and maybe that's a conversation that needs to be had, and there could be a way to find that out. With regards to corporate responsibility, are you referring to, ma'am, such as social entrepreneurship?
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure we were on the same page.
Exactly.
Absolutely. There isn't a business that that we start that we don't talk about social entrepreneurship and how important it is to the business, that the business owner and the business shows that they are committed to the community at large. And we've had great success. At first, the entrepreneur is usually kind of like, well, what are you really talking about? So we have that conversation. And it's also about making meaning. Guy Kawasaki said, if you start a business to make money, not only will you not make, and you don't make meaning, not only will you not make meaning, you won't make money. But if you make meaning, you will make meaning and you will make money. So it's got to not always be about you. It's got to be about that community oneness.
Is there any obligation on the part of folks who access your resources that they consider that, that they at least have gone through the training of it in terms of the resources that they're accessing so that they have the conversation and we're at least obliging them to sit and listen to the importance of meaning and money?
Well, at this point, it's left up to the individual business advisor, but my team knows that we are a center that's going to promote social entrepreneurship. And we only have two, just had a third advisor just join us on a part-time basis, but that is a very important piece of what we bring to the table. Has there been any official across the board with all the VBOCs? There hasn't been, but you gave me a great idea so that when we have our conference this year, I'm happy to lead the charge on and offering a training within that area.
Thank you. And I know I'm out of time, and I yield back to the chairwoman. And thank you so much for your testimony.
The gentle lady's time has expired, and now we recognize Mr. Antonio Delgado from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I thank each and every one of you for coming. And I'm sorry if my question has already been asked, but last week for me was my first in-district work week. Spent a lot of time in my district, which is upstate New York, Hudson Valley, Catskills area, actually one of the more rural districts in the country. And the district, at the town halls, I came across a lot of individuals, self-employed business owners who had a lot of questions about economic growth and economic opportunity. I think we have about 24,000 self-employed individuals in New York 19. And so my question is, what can we do to help these self-employed business owners access the capital they need to expand and grow their businesses? So can you talk about any work that each of you do with community financial development institutions and small business investment companies that specifically help rural folks who are self-employed?
I would like to address that by saying that education and training is one of the best areas to help them to understand their small business accounting, because most of them have never had even a small business accounting class. They wouldn't know a balance sheet from, you know, a scorecard. So it's the education and training and the managerial training and experience that we bring to the table that helps them to see where they are and where they need to go to be able to be ready, not only to launch their business, but it could be to grow. So, you know, they don't know what the 5 C's are. They don't know what a bail team is. The training is really crucial. It's key. And we are constantly doing that with a program we call Business Plan Bootcamp, when we help them with their market analysis and get started and prepare their plan. As also, we do twice a year a small business finance course. And that to me is the most vital piece, is educating these wannabe startups as well as the entrepreneur and the small business owner that's growing.
Can I just ask a follow-up to that? When you say that there's a lack of education or training, is this something that has been consistent through your time in this space, or have you seen a drop in the level of information or one's own ability to have the knowledge base to do what you're speaking of?
I would say it's been consistent.
Any reason why that would be the case?
Well, most people don't take accounting when they're in high school or college unless they're going to be a CPA or it's required or mandatory for their program. So, and some people don't even know how to balance a checkbook because hardly anyone writes checks anymore. So it's just the way, sometimes things are just the way they are. And so we try to help them to understand basic small business accounting before they can go on and really grasp the finance piece, because there is some learning curve there with how do I go from small business accounting to actually how does that equate to me financing, acquiring capital and me financing my own business. So it's just, if they've never done it, it's just something like if you tried to teach, if you said, I want you to go be a gourmet chef, but you're someone who's not even ever boiled water before, how would you do that?
I had boiled water, but
I have a feeling you have.
just one more follow-up. The boot camp piece, are there pieces of the curriculum that are designed or different depending on the types of community? So whether it's a rural community versus an urban community, are there different techniques, or is it all just more of a sort of basic line understanding of startup as opposed to, you know, the needs you might have for particular geographies?
That's a good question, by the way. There's the basic, and then for example, we teach basic QuickBooks, but then for those that have been in business for a little while, then they've graduated up and they need training on intermediate QuickBooks. That's one example. Another example is, say I am in a rural area and I haven't really had much access to resources. What's going to happen is we're going to try to help bring them that client up to speed. Means they're going to get more attention until they get in handheld. We hold a lot of hands at the VBOC, so a lot more attention, one-on-one, not just the general classroom setting, till we get them to where they feel comfortable in starting and launching and growing their business. So it does vary depending on their individual needs.
Great, thank you.
The gentleman.
I yield back my time.
Thank you. Yields back, and I would like to go into a second round of questions. I would like to, I would like to share with you, and I know that you are all aware about these powerful numbers. In 2018, the State of the Women-Owned Business report show how the number of women business-owned businesses went from 402,000 in 1972 to 12.3 million in 2018, and revenues increased from 8.1 billion to 1.8 trillion. And of course, those are powerful numbers. And when we all know that you serve close to 1 million businesses, and we all know the return of that technical assistant, we have 29 to 30 million businesses. So there is so much potential if we could market those services and we could do better outreach. So I don't know how can we tackle that, because so many times people have come before our committee and said that they didn't know about the existence of women business owner development centers, or the small business development centers, or veterans business centers. What can we do to, and that question was asked before, but that is an area that we need to really think about, and how can we expand our marketing tools to reach those underserved or businesses that are not getting the kind of assistance that they need. Mr. Yancey.
We've been very aggressive with what we've done in social media, and we had a social media audit in the last 4 or 5 months, and it says that we outperform standard nonprofits by a factor of about 10. We even looked at small for-profit organizations and find that we outperform. There is a point that you get to, even in social media, where your ability to grow is dependent on your ability to invest. And the things that we need to do, we boost stories, we do buy AdWords regularly. We work really hard to find partners that will carry our message for us, that are active in the space, and you've seen the list. That's a really good way to do it. You know, having said that, marketing campaigns are expensive, and they have to be consistent. They have to be long-term in order to create awareness that people will act on. You know, in an environment like we're in, with funding like we have, it's difficult. Our goal quickly is to be 1 degree of separation from our client. So if they ask anybody in the entrepreneurship arena, how do they get help, that person will think of SCORE. So we're working hard within that network to make sure there's awareness.
So part of the mission, for example, of the small business, women business centers, is to expand into underserved communities. What are you doing about that?
Well, I think the problem is even more dramatic than you characterized, because you accounted only for the businesses that have already started. But what about the clients out there who want to start a business and don't know where to turn? And so I think it is a severe challenge. Reaching those socially and economically disadvantaged populations, it is part of our mission. And providing the services in these creative ways, crafting them specific to the communities in which they serve, help answer that question. And so each community is distinct. The way that we pull together the resources, the partners that are at the table here and others all come to bear. But I think it's worth repeating the fact that the access to capital is just a critical component.
And in terms of new centers, could you explain the process that SBA uses to determine new centers, particularly in underserved communities?
No, Madam Chairwoman, I'm not privy to their internal process to select locations. We are in conversations, though, about the future. I don't know what that looks like, but I would hope that it would be strategic. I hope that we would not only be looking at communities where there's just a geographic absence of centers, but also where there's already service happening and a potential host organization with resources to serve. We should be able to entertain applications, I believe, for grants in those areas as well.
Mr. Rowe, any comments on that?
Well, just to follow on to what Ken says, every year, and this year it's March 20th, we have SBDC Day, and we managed to trend up on Twitter to 5, which is amazing outreach. The problem is trying to stay up there without either being incredibly offensive or something, is just almost impossible for us. And so I think one of the things that would be very helpful, something I've discussed with my membership, is it would be great if SBA would invest in public service announcements regarding small business development. All of these resources, I think, I went to the, I've forgotten now, for the television PSAs. Sadly, the buy-in's like $4 million. So that's out of reach for any of us. But collaboratively from the agency, that would be a huge marketing tool.
The gentleman is recognized, Mr. Shabbat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I probably won't take up the whole 5 minutes, but I come around with a second question to you two folks, but not to you two folks. I said how great you were, Mr. Yancey, but let me ask you a question. How does SCORE go about recruiting the wide variety of mentors it takes to match the unique entrepreneurs that are out there?
Recruiting is an activity these days that occurs not just at the chapter level, but also at the national level. Our website is the #2 source of new volunteers today. Our chapters look to make sure that they maintain an array of skills at the chapter that meets the needs of the community. And today, we're very focused on our need to be more diverse and better at serving all of the communities where we're located. I think our challenge, and Ms. Velasquez has been kind enough to point it out over the years, we still need to do more to better reflect the communities that we serve from a race ethnicity standpoint. And we're committed to that, and we're working on that, and we've made progress, and not good enough, but we're working at it.
All right, thank you very much. And then finally, Ms. Sagster, my colleague from Ohio, Mr. Balderson, got into this somewhat, but I'll get a little different angle. Veterans often possess a unique skill set that they've acquired during their time in the military. In what ways do VBOCs tailor their curriculum to best utilize those skills and make sure we're able to get those veterans either go through your program, either to start up a company themselves or to become employed by one of them or to grow an existing company or whatever?
Well, one of the ways, the best way that we have found to do that is that one-on-one initial assessment. We do a one-on-one initial assessment where we're looking at the service members' backgrounds, like what was their MOS when they were in service, in other words, their military operations specialty, what experience do they have that's on the civilian side of their life, what experiences do they have, and then as well as like what goals they want to achieve, because we have to be able to marry where they are and what experience they have and talents to what their goal is. So that, again, is part of where the magic happens, is that one-on-one, face-to-face, we're sitting down, we're rolling our sleeves up, and we're starting from scratch, and we're going to make this happen. Yeah. So that assessment is crucial for that first step as to where we take the client to the second step. And Boots to Business oftentimes is the first step because they're transitioning out, and that's the first time we touch them, or we call it a touch before we first meet them. And then they're invited for that assessment, the initial one-on-one, and we go from there. But that's how we assess.
Thank you. And I'll just conclude by, I had somebody in my office, this was some years back, and they were from, I believe, the American Trucking Institute, and they were talking about how we had a lot of our young men and women were coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq, et cetera, and they were driving multi-ton vehicles over there, but at that point, the unemployment rate wasn't as low as it is now, so it was tougher to get jobs. And sure. And their point was that a lot of these folks were underage to get their chauffeurs driving to drive the big rigs, so we needed to do something to change. I know we were looking at that for a long time, but some of those folks, as you know, they're not necessarily just employees of a trucking company, but they can become entrepreneurs, you know, and get a loan and own one of these big rigs and go around. A lot of them are independent agents. So I think we need to take all those things into consideration. And
Absolutely, and those truckers make great logistics.
right.
Small businesses, they really do. But you're exactly right.
And at that time, I think they said that there was an underserved need of about 100,000 drivers all over the country. So it really, you know, we need to do a better job to get all those folks together. And thank, again, all of you. I thought this was a very good hearing. So I yield back.
Thank you. And let me take this opportunity to thank all of you. Your insightful information and recommendations have been very important and enlightening. Entrepreneurship is the backbone of our nation's economy, helping individuals pursue their dreams and become financially self-sufficient. SBA's counseling and training programs are critical to their success. This hearing has been very informative, and your insights are important. As we move forward with legislation to modernize this program, it will be important to ensure that you have the resources you need to provide the counseling and training to America's small businesses. I would ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statement and supporting materials for the record without objection, so ordered. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you.